Fiji, officially named the Republic of the Fiji Islands, was first settled about 3,500 years ago. The majority of Fiji's islands were formed through volcanic activity around 150 million years ago. The country is comprised of an archipelago of more than 332 islands, of which 110 are permanently inhabited. In addition, there are more than 500 islets, making a total land area covering 18,300 square kilometres, or over 7,000 square miles, with a population of almost 850,000. The original inhabitants are now called Lapita people, after a distinctive type of fine pottery they produced. Remnants of this pottery have been found in practically all the islands of the Pacific east of New Guinea, and from the island nations of Melanesia in the South Pacific Ocean, centred about 2,000 kilometres northeast of New Zealand's North Island. The Melanesians and the Polynesians intermixed to create a highly sophisticated society long before the arrival of the Europeans. A massive 12th century volcanic eruption in southern Vanuatu, several hundred miles northwest of Fiji, coincides with the disappearance there of a certain pottery style and its sudden emergence in Fiji. So, probably, a number of people from Vanuatu migrated to Fiji in the 12th century. Ovalau is a lush volcanic island, approximately 180 square kilometres in size, with a population of 8,000. Tongans had long ago traded colourful cooler feathers, tapi, which are painted bark cloths, and weapons with the eastern Fiji Islands. From the early 19th century, European whalers, settlers and traders tackled their fears of reefs and cannibals and arrived seeking the desired fragrant sandalwood and bêche de mer, the sea cucumbers. Levuka became the first permanent European settlement in the Pacific Islands. It was Chief Tui Kakabau and his fellow chiefs who ceded the islands to Queen Victoria, and Fiji became a British colony on October 10, 1874. Levuka became Fiji's first capital, and very soon the first school in Fiji was built. Merchants arrived to set up businesses and shops, bars and hotels. Ships and sailors of every nationality visited here. In early days, a spot across from the post office was established whereby there was a pigeon loft for carrier pigeons that delivered mail to Suva about 40 miles away. A young man could send love letters to his sweetheart that way. If the young maiden was awaiting the message, it took less than an hour to get a reply. Nowadays, in the high-tech modern world, it takes days for a letter to get across town. Today, local market vendors sell fresh vegetables, fruit and fish. There are clubs, an internet cafe and restaurants, churches, schools, a museum, a library, local government buildings, a post office, freight couriers, banks, a police station, a customs and immigration office, a new modern hospital, and even a daily ferry boat from Suva. In 1877, Suva was made the capital of Fiji. Businesses and hordes of people left, abandoning Levuka to stand still in time. Now Levuka is a part of Fiji that is untouched from mass tourism and commerce. It remains the way Fiji was in the old days. Locals describe Levuka this way: "Things have slowed down a bit since then. Levuka may even be locked in a time warp. But the French clock in the old tower still gongs on the hour just like it did 100 years ago." For a very long time, the most frequently heard words in Fiji are bula bula, literally meaning life, and is most commonly used as a greeting and can mean almost anything. Hello, goodbye, good morning, good evening, and good day. Good wishes in general. The weather in Ovalau is idyllic, having a coastal tropical maritime climate with no extreme temperature fluctuations. The Europeans who discovered the Fiji Islands during the 17th and 18th centuries did it quite by accident, for most European explorers who sailed the Pacific during this time were looking to find Terra Australis Incognita, the great unknown southern land, later called Australia. Fijians called their home Viti, but the Tongans, with their odd pronunciation, called it Fisi. When Captain Cook asked the Tongans the name of the islands to their west, he heard Fiji. And so, from an Englishman's mishearing of a Tongan's mispronunciation, Cook proclaimed these islands as Fiji. This cavalier misnaming of places was a marked feature of English explorers' insensitivity. Cook described Fijians as formidable warriors, ferocious cannibals, and builders of the finest vessels in the Pacific, but not the greatest of sailors. When Fiji was ceded to Great Britain in 1874, epidemics nearly wiped out the population, and it seemed as if the native population was doomed. In the late 19th century, thousands of indentured labourers were brought in from India by the British colonial masters to work in the sugar plantations, and these were further supplemented in the early 20th century by free agent workers from India. Later, health campaigns were implemented and the population picked up again. Although Fiji remained a racially divided society, Fijians, Indians and Europeans all worked together generally to nominate their representatives to the Legislative Council. Fiji sought independent government in the 1960s, but that did not occur until more intense negotiations eventually led to total political independence for Fiji on October 10, 1974. Rhythmic drumming filled the hills and valleys below Ovalau's steep bluffs as we made our way to attend Levuka's Old Capital Festival. This event is celebrated annually in October and goes on regardless of rain or shine. The day started with a parade, followed with a rugby seven-a-side tournament, and the rain came down in sheets. But the game went on, and soon the mud made it impossible to identify which team was which. Later, young boys took centre stage to perform the haka dance, a traditional ancestral war cry and dance, with vigorous movements, stamping of the feet, with rhythmically shouted accompaniment. They presented the old tribal moves with their old-fashioned meanings, hoping to attract the attention of the watching girls. The young girls were not to be outdone, as they also joined in the competitions and festivities. These contests were followed by basket weaving, flower arranging and singing. Special foods were prepared, and the token Big Bird is in attendance to supervise everything. It is a family event, a celebration of Levuka's once prominent position before losing its title as capital of Fiji in 1882 to Suva. Despite the name, many Pacific islanders in previous centuries were less than Pacific. In fact, they were downright warlike. In the 1830s, various varieties of missionaries arrived in southern Laos, in the eastern group of Fijian islands, to find converts and to preach against war and cannibalism. Progress was slow, until the powerful chief Kakabau somewhat reluctantly adopted Christianity in 1854. The Methodist Church later sent the Reverend Baker out to spread the gospel in the western Fijian island of Viti Levu. Unfortunately for him, in 1867, he was killed and eaten by the locals, who resented his lofty manner and his generally confused approach to the people of Fiji and its politics. He and his patronizing ways were not missed. Fijians have since adopted Christianity alongside their traditional spiritual beliefs like taboo, which are sacred prohibitions, and mana, spiritual powers. And they still worship their ancestral gods, particularly during kava ceremonies. Taboo areas and codes of conduct are still laid out, and the symbolic tabua still holds its intrinsic role in the social and economic fabric of Fijian life. The tabua is a sperm whale tooth, the ultimate talisman of Fiji. It is believed that the fates of men, clans and tribes often depend upon the way in which a whale's tooth has been presented or received. In addition to Christianity, because of the high Indo-Fijian population, Hinduism plays a large part in the spiritual life of Fiji. The people of Fiji take pride in their island, and the cemeteries are groomed regularly. On this day, a team of workers were cutting back the grass with machetes. We approached the only man lacking a machete to learn that the workers were not employed by the town, but were rather wards of the court. They were prisoners doing hard labour, and the unarmed man was their guard. We were surprised by this for a moment and asked whether this was safe. He laughed at our wonder and said that the prisoners have nowhere to go on this small island, and there's nowhere to hide. They can't swim away, for the current is much too strong, and, besides, they're all nice guys. He seemed content with the situation, so we turned away and climbed the stairs to survey the crystal-clear lagoon and the relentless, endless Pacific crashing against the reef. From time to time, a smiling prisoner would pop out from behind a headstone to invite us to join them for their noon lunch of bread and water. We wandered among the graves for a while, but we didn't stay for lunch. It's interesting to see the large spectrum of religious beliefs displayed here in this cemetery. European, Indo-Fijian and Fijian, all remembered here in their passing. Although Captain James Cook sailed through Fiji in 1774 and later further explored these islands, major credit for the discovery and recording of the potential of the islands went to Captain William Bligh, who sailed Fiji in the years after the mutiny on the Bounty in 1789. After they had been cast adrift by the mutineers, Captain Bligh and his castaways passed in their open boat between Vanua Levu and Viti Levu, through a channel now known as Bligh Water. Captain Bligh said this of his journey to his fellow men in the open boat: "Without charts, I shall have to try and navigate from memory. We will go close to the most savage islands in these waters, the Fiji Islands, where cannibalism is perfected almost to a science, and from there, my friends, God willing, we shall proceed on to the Great Barrier Reef itself, then to New Holland, and from there across the Timor Sea. And now it will take us at least 2 months, and we have provisions and water enough to last us 1 week. So that is the situation, gentlemen, plain and simple." Oh dear, oh dear. As if the excitement of the annual celebration of Levuka's old capital festival wasn't enough, the alarm went up that a ship was burning in the harbour. There were only a couple of vessels in the harbour, and one of them was ours. Everybody in town rushed down to see what was up. Happily, Wintersea was safe, but this working ship had sailed its last voyage. The first European to discover the island of Kandavu in the southern group of Fiji was again the egregious Captain Bligh in 1792, when he sighted the island during his second voyage to Fiji on the HMS Providence. Kandavu is home to about 10,000 people, covers a land area of 411 square kilometres, and resembles in shape a dragon walking across the seabed. After carefully following the instructions in the guidebook, and with the encouragement of the customs officers in Levuka, we left with a gift-wrapped kava root in hand to bestow upon the chief of Kandavu after the overnight sailing passage to the village of Vunisia. This island group has rugged mountains with precipitous cliffs and few roads. The great Astrolabe reef stretches 65 kilometres in length, like a ribbon on the southern shore. It was named in 1827, following French explorer Dumont d'Urville's collision with the reef in his vessel, the Astrolabe. The reef is a great attraction for world-class scuba divers, with a tremendous variety of large coral reefs and submerged pinnacles that curl away and drop off into the fourth deepest oceanic trench in the world. It is an underwater photographer's dream. Birding is also an enjoyable experience, and on a good day one can catch a glimpse of the famous indigenous Kandavu parrot. With Wintersea anchored on the north shores of Kandavu, inside the protection of the outer reef, we stepped ashore to seek out the chief and to deliver our gift-wrapped kava root. In a small store, we met a group of ladies doing their handicrafts and asked whether and where we could find the chief. They looked at each other in wonder and soon burst into a fit of laughter, saying that they were not aware of such a figurehead. With the kava roots in their newspaper and string gift wrapping filling our packsack, we explored Kandavu, a part of Fiji that is seldom visited. This remote island is truly lovely in a rugged sort of way, with wooded hillsides, valleys and grassy meadows, stunning bays and an outer reef that is a diver's dream. The only restaurants on Kandavu are at the few resorts, but we were warned in advance not to expect shark and octopus on the menus, for they never serve them in Kandavu. This is due to the local legend of the octopus god, who once brokered a deal with the shark god. They agreed to combine their efforts to protect the good folks of Kandavu, whereby the shark would never attack the people. This legend is believed, and both species are therefore protected. Nabukalevu volcano lies on the southwest end of Kandavu Island and is the lava dome of Mount Washington, with an elevation of 805 meters. The last known eruption of this summit was about the year 1660. 3 fault lines run through Nabukalevu, making the volcano prone to earthquakes, which cause avalanches and landslides, disrupting the underwater life. Geological findings reveal deposits of pottery and human remains to corroborate a widespread local belief that some catastrophic events in Nabukalevu, sometime during the last 2,000 years, possibly destroyed an entire large settlement near Mount Washington. Most of Fiji is mountainous terrain, made up of dormant or extinct volcanoes. However, some were also formed from limestone and coral islets. The highest point in Fiji is Mount Tomanivi, located on the main island of Viti. It reaches an altitude of about 4,000 feet. Fiji has 50 hot springs, and the island's innermost areas feature lush rainforests with an abundance of tree species, plants and wildlife. The Fijian Islands are seismically active and prone to experience earthquakes. Earthquakes can cause volcanic eruptions and tsunamis, a large ocean wave caused by a sudden upward motion of the ocean floor. One of the most destructive tsunamis in Fiji hit Suva on September the 14th, 1953, after a severe 6.7 measured earthquake. That tsunami resulted in a 60 million cubic metre landslide at the head of the Suva Canyon. Another major earthquake, though without this time a tsunami, occurred on November the 17th, 1979, with severe damage and destruction to infrastructure on neighbouring islands, and a landslide on the Fijian island of Kamea. These islands are a sailor's paradise, offering a slow pace that is virtually untouched by the modern world. The few tourists that arrive in Kandavu by plane rush off to the resort and never see Kandavu in its purity. On this island there is a limited supply of electricity which runs only a few hours each evening, leaving the sky unpolluted with man-made light. So the night sky is lit only with stars and moon glow, or the shining of the plankton in the sea. The morning call of the rooster and exotic birds are the only sounds that break the lapping of the sea against the hull of Winter Sea, as we look in wonder at this amazing place so far removed deep in the South Pacific. We never did find the chief of Kandavu so that we could give him the courtesy gift as advised by the officials at Levuka. We left Kandavu to sail for Muscat Cove with the same gift-wrap package of kava that we had planned to leave with him. After days of searching and asking for the fabled man, we realized that our efforts were in vain. Kandavu does not seem to have a chief. We chucked the gift overboard after we had heard that the best kava is grown on Kandavu anyway. The Mamanuca and Yasawa Islands arc north like a stingray's tail from the body of Viti, the most westerly of Fiji's larger islands, and are a world of idyllic South Sea Edens with reefs and cobalt blue waters that provide cinematic eye candy for films such as Tom Hanks' Castaway and Brooke Shields' vehicle to stardom, The Blue Lagoon. Muscat Cove Island Resort on Malolo Lalai Island is set on 600 acres, surrounded by 7 kilometres of pristine beaches, shrouded in tall, swaying coconut palms, and is a safe haven for visiting yachts. The Mamanuca's Islands are a volcanic archipelago of 20 smaller islands that are so low-lying that 7 of them get covered over at high tide. They are scattered hither and thither amongst exotic, clear, clean reefs that are home to pelagic and reef fish, attracted by nutrients swept in by strong currents. The soft, rolling hills of Malolo Lalai are covered with coconut and banana plantations, and across the water lay Nandi on the big island of Viti, where we plan to sail later. Fiji holds strongly on to old legends and beliefs that are passed through the generations. One legend, often shared, is of Degei, who was the most important of the gods, the serpent god, and it was said that he lived on the slopes of the Kavadra Mountains, on the most northeasterly tip of Viti. Other widely recognized gods were Ravoyalo, the soul slayer, who was posted on the path of the departed spirits. His purpose was to club them, and the departed were challenged to outwit him. There were also other fierce gods like Rokola, Rutumamabula, and Dukuwaka. What mischief they got up to is shrouded in mystery. In Fijian mythology, the god Degei faces the soul of the dead after their long journey from the sunny land of the living to the cold, misty land of the dead, and interrogates them as soon as they arrive. Idle men, whose nails are long, will be punished. Industrious souls will be rewarded. After judgment, the soul will be thrown into a deep lake. The soul will sink for a long time until it reaches Muri Muria, a sort of purgatory. Once there, some will be rewarded and others will receive dire punishment. Only a few are chosen by the gods, arbitrarily it seems, to go to Bororuta, the land of eternal life and joy, where they will rest in the cool shade. Does this not all sound so familiar? Fijian mythology is also rife with stories about its history of cannibalism. Possibly the most notorious of Fiji's cannibals was the 19th century chieftain Ratu Udri Udri, who is buried off the King's Road in northern Viti Levu. Udri Udri was known for practicing cannibalism even after Fiji had officially ceded to Great Britain and its people had widely accepted Christianity. Although some legends claim that Udri Udri ate over 9,000 people, the actual estimate is probably closer to 900. It must have been quite difficult without refrigeration. In 1849, sometime after Udri Udri's death, the Reverend Richard Lythe, who was staying in Viti Levu near the chieftain's former territory, came across a row of 872 stones placed side by side. Lythe then asked Udri Udri's son Ravatu about the stones and was informed that each stone represented a human being that the chieftain had eaten. According to Udri Udri's son, the father had a voracious appetite and had a taste for very little other than human flesh. He would keep beside him at all times a box of cooked and preserved human meat, and would consume it all by himself, sharing none. Suva is the capital and largest city on the islands of Fiji, but the town of Nadi, on the most westerly side of the island, is the busiest tourist destination. To its north is the port town of Lautoka, where sugarcane is exported. Most Fijians live on the coasts, leaving Viti Levu's interior sparsely inhabited due to its rugged terrain. We found Port Denero Marina to be the best location to dock Wintersea and to begin to explore the region of Nadi. Indo-Fijians, those descended from the sugar plantation labourers brought in from India, now make up almost half the population. There is a good deal of friction between these people and the native Fijians, making for ongoing political problems in Fiji. Probably the most colourful tourist attraction is the Sri Siva Subramaniya temple, the largest Hindu temple in the southern hemisphere. This temple holds special importance for Fijian Hindus because it alone survived the wave of destructive anti-Indian violence that occurred in October of 2008. The Kendrit Shiri Sanatan Damararam Shiv temple, built in 1905, located in Nadi, was destroyed by arsonists at that time. 4 other temples were also burned down within just a few weeks of the Kendrit Shiri Shiv temple destruction, evidencing a wide-scale attack against Fijian Hindus. The foundation for this temple, which replaced the previous temple of 1926, had been laid at the old site in 1976 during the Golden Jubilee celebrations by His Excellency the High Commissioner for the Government of India in Fiji. There began a long drawn-out process to begin the construction. The pile driving followed in 1986, and actual building work began in earnest after a lull of some 5 years. The consecration ceremonies of their new national temple were held on July the 15th, 1994. It is an architectural marvel that demonstrates the principal features of the traditional Hindu temple. Worshippers and tourists alike flock to this temple en masse every day to participate in and witness the colourful religious ceremonies held there. Fiji is a multiracial, multicultural nation, and race relations in Fiji have recently been fairly acrimonious. Laws state that it is illegal to discriminate on the grounds of colour, race or ethnic origins, and it is an offence to incite racial disharmony, but disharmony is rampant. Just outside the town of Nandi is the Garden of the Sleeping Giant, a natural rainforest walk through a tropical landscape and a beautiful orchid collection, showcasing more than 2,000 different kinds of orchids and covering 20 hectares. The Garden of the Sleeping Giant sits at the foothills of the Nausori Highlands. These orchid gardens were started in 1977 by the late Raymond Burr, the Canadian actor whose career spanned 6 decades and encompassed more than 60 motion pictures. Born Raymond William Stacey Burr on May 21, 1917, he was primarily known for his roles in the television dramas Perry Mason and Ironside. It's easy to imagine Burr digging amongst the orchids, for he once famously stated, "I'm a fine guy to be an actor. Can't stand to have my picture taken," which leaves one believing that he preferred a quiet, private life. Burr had many hobbies over the course of his life. Besides cultivating orchids, he collected wine, art, stamps and seashells. He was interested in cooking, flying, sailing and fishing. Burr was an avid reader with a retentive memory. He was also fond of dogs, and among the earliest importers and breeders of Portuguese water dogs into the United States. Burr was a quietly private man and kept his homosexuality very quiet. He had a companion who shared in all his interests and businesses. In the mid-50s, Burr had met Robert Benavides, and they became a couple in about 1960, a relationship that lasted 33 years until Raymond Burr's death. In 1965, just prior to developing the orchid gardens, Burr purchased Naitauba, an island of the northern Lau Islands of Fiji, 4,000 acres rich in seashells. He and Benavides oversaw the raising of copra, grown commercially for export. They spent only 2 months a year on the triangular-shaped island, but Burr planned to retire there permanently. Medical problems made that impossible, and he sold the property in 1983. During the filming of his last Perry Mason movie in the spring of 1993, Raymond Burr fell ill. Cancer had spread to his liver and was at that point inoperable. Burr's and Benavides' life together included many shared interests, such as growing orchids and establishing a vineyard that still bears his name today in California. Burr left Benavides his entire estate, including all my jewellery, clothing, books and artwork, and any other items of a personal nature. He was 76 years old. His little house still contains a few photographs, his favourite chair and even his walking cane. Raymond Burr loved these orchids as much as he loved Fiji. He bequeathed this orchid garden to the nation of Fiji, and it is a lovely tranquil oasis, a fitting memorial to such a kind, sensitive man. Fiji's flag was officially adopted in October 1970. It has the Union Jack representing the country's long association with Great Britain. The blue field is symbolic of the Pacific Ocean, and the coat of arms displays a golden lion holding a cocoa pod over panels with a palm tree, sugarcane, bananas, and a dove of peace. In leaving this tropical paradise, few words can describe the beauty, but try to imagine a place of swaying coconut palms, white sand beaches, a cloudless sky, sweetly perfumed frangipani, warm sunshine, coral reefs, ideal for snorkeling and scuba diving, and the friendly cries of bula bula in the air. This can only be Fiji.